Hi everyone, my name's Alex Fisher, and some of you may know me in my day job as an occupational therapist in the West Midlands Huntington's disease team. But I'm also a PhD student, and that's the main reason I want to speak to you today about social cognition and its role in Huntington's disease. Social cognition, what's that? Okay, so most of the things that we think about concern something that's socially connected. And the scientific name for this is social cognition. So it's made up of lots of skills, but at its heart is the ability to be able to think and feel about how another person might be thinking or feeling and interact with them. It's also about being able to understand the emotions in everyday situations, including hearing and sensing emotions. So to make sense of that, because you might not be even aware that that was a thing, that some of you might be sensing an emotion such as anger in somebody's voice, or smelling something unpleasant such as disgust, which we know is an emotion, and responding to it. So the structures of the brain thought to be responsible for this social thinking are known to be affected in Huntington's disease. And when it's tested formally, so pen and paper, scanning, it appears it's problematic for people with HD as the disease progresses. As a result, most of the trials that people are in actually have emotional recognition used as a marker for disease progression. Why is it important? Okay. Well, the complexity of every day is not to be underestimated. I want you just to think about the social for a moment if you're not already thinking about it, because you will be, because you've come on this talk. Everyday life relies on having intact social skills. So there's quite a famous scientist called Chris Frith, and basically what he says, these are understanding social stimuli, which tell us about the world, responding appropriately to social stimuli, and understanding and using social signals to convey information. If you don't have these skills or you're struggling with these skills, it's been described by another scientist as like being the alien at the party. You go into a room and you can see people moving and you can see their skin changing, but you can't understand what's going on. And as a result, you feel isolated. And of course, one of the greatest risk factors for problems with our future health and well-being is being isolated. So here we go. So this is the background story to the study. And it's the background story to my interest in social cognition. So here we go. So looking at this slide, okay, what do a policeman, a pile of books, and a stethoscope have in common? I'm really well known for my bad jokes in this team, but this is not actually a bad joke. It's rather the inspiration and background to the study. I remember the exact moment I became curious about social cognition. I was introduced to a former policeman with HD and his wife. Now, policing is a tough people business, and I asked him if he found understanding others difficult. It was just casual conversation. I remember him saying, nah, never. Now, at the same time, his wife looked away and shook her head. He didn't notice. So it could have been bravado, but I was curious. As a result, I undertook a systematic review on social cognition in HD. A systematic review, for those of you who are unaware of that, is a summary of all of the evidence so far. And the findings showed that although emotional recognition and social cognitive deficits were present on scans and in testing, as I said earlier, that the reality of social cognition, so social functioning every day, and how it looked in context were missing. Even when scientists do test this with real life scenarios, but still on paper, the results are mixed and very individual. And that means that we have to look at it that way. So, as you've heard, I now work in the regional HD service where about 70% of my caseload is people with HD. And for the most part, I witness this in nearly all HD interactions, with one of my colleagues describing it as an acquired autism. So how can we capture what does it look like in real life of social cognition, or what is known as social functioning? What range of methods allow for real life and HD? So for this, we turn to what's called qualitative methods. So qualitative research methods allow for a rich detail of experience to be captured, and in particular, a method called ethnography. The theory of ethnography believes that life is socially constructed and is practiced in the spaces of our daily community. So therefore, the tool for the researcher is to observe and participate in the spaces of the people being studied. Sort of makes sense. So in the case of this study, it was to observe and gently inquire about relationships, so where the social takes place, but within people's spaces over an extended period of time. As often as we know, people are not just what they say, they're also what they do. But hold on one second, COVID happened. So with the advent of the pandemic, originally I was hoping to be with people in their home spaces, and it seems that I can now a little bit more. But we had to alter the design to be COVID safe and still be COVID safe. We also had to include some of the practicalities that the patient participation group HD Voice, thank you HDA, also asked for. So practical ethics, being suitable and equitable for all people with cognitive impairment, communication deficits, as well as the considerations of carers and companions. So ultimately, the methods have morphed to suit a range of options tailored to individuals and their families, and to suit the circumstances and balancing the ongoing risks of the pandemic. So we now get into the study bit. Okay, so this is a PhD study, so it's on a smaller scale than other studies, but qualitative studies are traditionally quite small because you're gathering quite a lot of rich information, so there are lots and lots of data. So who and what? We would ideally like 15 people alongside of their close companions to become enrolled in the study. They must be, and I'm sorry about this, 18 years and older, and they must understand the study. That means that they must consent to the study and understand what it's about. Now, those makeup of the 15 people, that can be a person with HD and a companion. That can be a former companion of somebody with HD, or that can be a person with HD by themselves. The key is that they are willing to be observed by me and to have conversations up to, but not always, depends on tolerance, 5 sessions, usually talking about their social skills in an environment of their choosing. So that can be in their own home, which would be perfect, and I would travel and I would meet you or that can be on the internet. So various means. So that's essentially the people that we are looking for and hoping to recruit. And this is so that we can see this rich social functioning, what people are saying and what people are doing. Okay. And it doesn't matter if you feel that, you know, there's nothing wrong with your social skills. That's interesting in and of itself. We're not looking to prove something here, because that introduces an element of what's called bias, and we don't want that. What we actually want is we want to hear people's stories, and we want to honor those stories, and we want to hear stories that are about the social. So I suppose the whole thing is, how's that going to help? Well, there's this huge gap of knowledge. So this is only just the beginning, and it will probably be built on. We want to hear and honor stories and acknowledge voices that aren't in the scientific literature. So, believe it or not, whilst there are lots of voices of perhaps carers and companions, I mean, for obvious reasons, there might be voices, not be voices of people with HD, and we wanted to see those stories represented and their voices in whichever way acknowledged. We want to be able to use methods that help us collect the stories. So these are a little bit different from your standard interviewer asking question, person talking back. So they're quite creative ways of doing things. And we want those methods to sit alongside of traditional scientific methods. We want to find out what works and what doesn't. HD scientists and neuroscientists want this information so that they can understand cognition better. Cognition is often defined from other populations of people and perhaps not about what it's like to have HD. So we need to kind of know that in order to be able to collaborate with scientists, so we can apply and use this information in clinical practice ultimately. And then, of course, this is about using this information in action for and with HD families and working out how this can help them, particularly educating other health and social care professionals who are perhaps not that familiar with some of the things that are actually happening on the ground. And that's it. That's the formal bit of this presentation. So if you are interested, please do get in touch. You can either get in touch through your HDA specialist advisor, and they all have my contact details, and they've got details of the study, or you can contact me directly on my university email or my mobile phone. You can even text me or even WhatsApp me. So hopefully I'm reasonably accessible. Thank you, everyone. And if you've got any questions, I'm now really happy to answer them.